Hey, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of In Conversation With. Today, we've switched it up a little bit, doing something slightly different. I'm going to be interviewing a very good friend of mine who is a superb photographer as well, and has a photography business that she operates out of Johannesburg. In fact, in the same suburb, which is even better, kind of means she goes up in my estimation, in my hood. It's all of those kind of things. I'm James Lennox, the MD of MILK+SUGAR. We are social storytellers. We love telling people stories and helping people tell their own stories. Berna, before I start waffling on way too much, welcome to In Conversation With. Great to have you with me. Who are you and what do you do? Just give us a quick elevator pitch.
Thank you, James, and thanks for having me. It's a real privilege being here today, especially during lockdown. It's nice to see different faces, you know. So I'm Berna Coetzee. I'm a freelance commercial photographer. I am originally from Cape Town, or let's rather say I'm from Worcester. I'm a real Afrikaans girl. I grew up in the Boland, and then after school, went to explore, had to see greater cities, had to explore the world. But I've basically been a photographer all my life. I did photography as my art subject at school, and then from there went to study it, finished my diploma, went and worked on the cruise liner as a photographer, which was great fun, saw the world, came back, finished my degree, because I really have a passion also for teaching and sharing my knowledge. And then, went into the commercial world of photography, assisting different photographers, and eventually taking a leap of faith and starting my own business. I've shot a lot of food books, which is here in the back. I've worked for a lot of magazines. And in 2017, we've relocated to Johannesburg. So I'm kind of like a new
Best move you ever made, moving to Joburg, let me tell you, Ben. I'm also from Cape Town, so I can say that. I guess for those perhaps watching this, and even for myself, because it's something that I guess I'm not 100% clear on. You call yourself a commercial photographer. I mean, I would imagine that all photographers are commercial, but is there something that distinguishes, say, a commercial photographer from, I don't know, what would the other ones be, a portrait photographer or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's people do struggle with the whole fact of just, number one, being a photographer. Most people, when they hear you're a professional photographer and you do it full time, they're totally shocked because they have no understanding how you can make money off it. And then the other question you always get when you say you're a photographer, like, oh, you shoot weddings. And I'm like, I have and I can, but that's not my main income. And then the other thing is, oh, babies, children. You're like, I have and I can, but yet not again. And then the best way I can explain myself to people as a photographer is I'm a typical magazines photographer. If you pick up a Roy Rosa or a Sari or a Woolies food magazine, that's the type of photography I do. So and that's the easy way for me in saying I'm a commercial photographer, is just pick up any magazine, even from the advertisements you see to the food photography. That's the type of photography I do.
I'm kind of guessing that photography is not only your job, but it's your passion, right?
Totally. I think, James, I'm in such a privileged position to be in, and when I do my work, when I do photographs, I really love it. It's not a schlep, it's not a drag. It's amazing the people you meet, that you work with, and those people become like lifetime friends. I mean, I've got so many people that I've met in this industry that's my friends. They're not just, I can guess you can say in a lot of industries, but it's quite difficult when you also still, I'm a one-man band. You can call yourself the CEO of MILK+SUGAR. Well, I'm the cleaning lady, I'm the telephone lady, I'm the tax lady. No, I'm a one-man band. I do use assistants to help me in bigger shoots, but most of the time I work on my own. And that is so nice when you can then meet other people and you really, you love what you do, and at the end of the day, you are living out your passion.
Thanks so much for promoting me to CEO of the company. I love that. Managing director is a good place to start.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway,
I'm obviously not in corporate.
No, neither am I, which is a good thing. It's always good to kind of determine what it is. Here's a question which I think anybody would want to know, and I guess it's also quite a subjective question. What makes a good picture? What makes a good photograph?
I always go back to saying beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I mean, my husband gets extremely upset with me because I will open magazines or I'll look at product photographs. I'll be like, this is horrible. You walk into these fast food takeaway shops. And you're like, can I please do your photographs for free? Because it's just so horrific. But for me, there's obviously there's some photographic rules that you have to follow to get a good photograph, especially if you have to sell a product. But if you just look at photographs, I remember the best example that I can give of this is my friend had a photograph of a boy milking a cow, and she asked me, what do you think of the photograph? It was black and white, and it was flat. And if I say flat, it had no contrast in it, so it was almost just like an overall kind of gray. And I said to her, it's all right. And then she said to me, it's my father. And the moment she said that, it became the most beautiful photograph to me, because then it wasn't about the technical aspects about it, or how it was taken, or where it was taken, or the time of day. It just became beautiful because it was her father. And that's the other aspect of photography that people carry with them. It's a sentiment that you carry with you. But if you look at a commercial photography, let's say, for instance, I have to photograph a bottle of wine. If I photograph a bottle of wine and I've got a lot of reflections on it, and you can't really see the label properly, it's not going to do the product justice. At the end of the day, you have to sell that product. You have to promote it to public, and they would want to look at it and say, wow, I want that bottle of wine. That looks delicious. That's at the end of the day. Or even with the food photography, you look at it and you go, I want that. I want to eat it. And I think that's the great compliment I get from my food photography, is people usually say, you're making me hungry, please stop posting the photographs. And that's what you want to hear. And I think that's what makes a good photograph.
I'm guessing in lockdown is that you could take any picture of a bottle of wine and people would just love it, given the fact that there's a shortage and our president hasn't yet lifted the ban on wine sales. You kind of jumped the gun a little bit there talking about your photography, because we're going to get there. I want to actually look at some of the examples of your work and talk about how you kind of came up with the shot and why you've kind of chosen the composition and all of those kind of things. But before we get there, as a person who creates video content, the challenge that I imagine that you have is that you've got to capture a story which I can tell in a minute or 2 minutes or half an hour or 60 minutes if I'm making a feature film. You've got to capture that one moment. Is that the biggest challenge you have in storytelling, or is there other stuff?
I think that the pleasure that I do enjoy with storytelling in photography is when I was in Cape Town, I did a lot of work for Landbou Weekblad, and they've got a food magazine, Buddha course. And with that, we traveled a lot through South Africa, doing specific stories, going to a farm, photographing the farmer, photographing the food, the whole story. So you've got about, 6 pages max where you can tell a full story, like you would say, where you can tell the story in 5 minutes. And the challenge with that is, you have to, what do you photograph? You've got to pick the right thing to photograph to bring over the exact story. If you look at the background, I've got a photo there of the Guggenheim Museum and the Manhattan Bridge in New York. And I can't put it up there with a video. It's like, it's memories from my trip to New York, but it's there in a photograph, and it will be, and every time I see it, it will be a reminder.
Let's actually look at some of your work. And one of the first pictures I want to look at is your interior work. And these are the pictures that you've decided you want to talk about. So what is it about this particular picture that appeals to you?
So this particular picture is quite nice to me because of, okay, let's just start with the reason why I did it was for an interior designer who designed the interior of this house. It was a brand new build house, so there was some architectural, like, I don't know what the word is, but anyway, some architectural points that had to be captured, but it was mostly about the interior. So if you look at the photograph, you would almost think like the top space is kind of wasted. I mean, you can also crop it from the big pillows in the front, and then the top, you can crop it into like a more landscape photograph. We'll portray a nicer photo with a little dog and all of that. But I had to give the whole image across to the client and the interior designer. They had to see the full picture. So yes, it would have been a better picture on the eye or beautiful, but because I had to show the interior, what is done, but also the architecture, I had to shoot quite wide, bring something into the foreground that can fill up the foreground with those interesting pillows, cushions, which looks kind of like rocks. So, it's almost like when you go to a shoot, like an interior shoot or an interior decor shoot, you have to take so many aspects in consideration. what am I looking at? I'm looking at the architecture. I'm also looking at the interior and the decor. I have to kind of capture both. And sometimes it's a challenge because you're limited with space, but sometimes, you know, it can work in your advantage. So this photograph was not just about the interior designing, was also about the architecture. So this photograph specifically I like it because it's kind of trendy, it's more upmarket, it's not very old school, it's a brand new house. And it was just a nice project that I worked on with the interior designer, trying to portray what she did and what she can do.
So you've got different genres that you shoot for. I want to move on to your food photography now and look at two different photographs, the one being an advertorial or advertising photography and the other one being editorial. We've got the picture of the advertorial, which is the burger, just so that people know. The burger is the advertorial shot, and then the editorial is that rather highly stylized food shot that we're showing now.
Okay.
So talk us through those and how you kind of constructed these two different photos.
So your advertorial advertising photograph, like the burger, is something that you're selling a product. So let's, for instance, say that was for a patty, for a patty company. So, you know, you have to, and what can you do with a patty? You make burgers, okay? So you want to, with that photograph, I actually have a finished photograph of the finished product as well. But this is quite kind of nice in a way to show a product different as well. Yes, it's great to have a finished burger. We've all seen finished burgers photographs everywhere. But it's quite interesting to see like a falling burger in the way, you know, it's going to, at the end of the day, come together. So that's kind of more your advertising. That also takes a lot of more time. For instance, that photograph probably took me 2 days to photograph. It's not just the photography, it's also the editing that goes in with it afterwards. So that photograph, specifically the burger one, is made out of so many different layers. And then the other one with the pork neck chop was actually done for Mike's Kitchen for their menu. And that is more of an editorial way. That's where you look at the food, and the food that we photograph, you can physically eat. There's no, you know, shaving cream or grease or whatever on it like people used to use back in the 80s in advertising. They don't use it that much anymore. But, you know, in the editorial, that's the food what you see is what you make is the food you can eat. And that's, yeah, editorial is more than for your magazine. And if that answers your question.
One of the things actually that it raises another question before we carry on with more pictures is how much has social media changed the way that photographers like yourself, like commercial photographers, approach taking pictures, given the fact that everybody now considers themselves to be a photographer?
I wouldn't say social media has changed the approach that I would take photographs. I think social media has really opened up the market for people to have more access to it, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think with, you know, there's a lot of people, I think, who really love photography and would have wished they could have been a photographer. I mean, there's so many people when I meet them and I say I'm a photographer, like, oh, I really want to be a photographer and I love photography. So I think it's a great thing these days with technology, how you can take still great photographs with your phone. I don't see it as a threat. Listen, yes, technology has, in a way, I wouldn't say social media, but I would say technology has definitely affected my job. These days, you know, you don't even have to take a product photo anymore because you can literally build it in 3D. There's no need for a, you know, all those little pick and pay leaflets you get away with. It's all built in 3D. But there's other avenues, you know. It's like looking at it, how we came from film photography to digital photography. If I was stuck in film and just said, I'm never going to change, I'm never going to shoot digital, because I started in film, you know, that's how I learned, I would have not been where I am, because my clients would be like, Berna, we can't wait 2 days for the photographs. We want to see it now. So, yeah, I think social media is only a good thing for photography.
I think let's move on to another picture here. This is of people, your people pictures. Tell us a little bit about your approach when it comes to taking pictures of people, because I imagine it's quite different from, say, doing food, which you can manipulate and do what you want with.
Yes. I would classify myself as a people person. I love working with people, but the most thing that I do like portraying about people is almost their personality, to capture their personality. So this specific photograph is about Jeannie D. I don't know if she used to be a top billing presenter and quite well known. And it was such a pleasure working with her, getting to know, I mean, it's not like I know her, I met her on the day, but you obviously know a little bit about her, and then you have to kind of portray who she is. And this was actually more kind of a editorial fashion shoot, which I wouldn't classify myself as a fashion photographer. I would more classify myself as a portrait photographer. So this was kind of just also showing the clothing, but not so much the clothing as the surrounding and her.
Is it difficult rather to take pictures in those kind of environments?
Not for me, but I do know the people that who was on me with set. There was specifically, and I'm not going to mention names, celeb that I had to photograph, and the stylist and the makeup artist was like, how do you keep a straight face? Because he had to take his shirt off and I had to photograph him. And I was like, it's a job. I can't look at him and be like, oh, you're so hot right now. It's like, you still have to be professional. You still have to do your job. So with it, I think that the nice thing also is when you meet these celebrities, they also just people, and the nice thing about that is they come in and they just are who they are, and it's what you make out of it. If I'm going to be like, oh, hi, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to catch a moment of them to portray who they are. But we've just been in a really awkward situation. So yes, you're going to keep yourself, you're going to keep your cool, but yeah, I don't really get very flustered with celebrities, because a celebrity for me is not really a celebrity for somebody else, or, it depends in what genre you are, where you are, who you see as a celebrity. So it was quite easy for me to photograph celebrities just because I see them just as normal people.
Lovely. Well, shout out to Jenny D. You are a normal person, but you're a great person. And I'm sure we'll bump into you one day outside of lockdown again. Let's move it on very quickly. I want to bring up the last two photos that we're going to look at. Two different product photos, two different styles. And I know that we were talking just before we started this interview that you have a favorite one out of the two of these. I'm going to let you talk through them and just tell us which one is your favorite and why you prefer it to the other one, even though you like, obviously, both of the pics.
Yeah. So the one with the olive oil for Willow Creek used to be my favorite. I just love that photograph, and I love it was a very technical shoot for me, because I had to get both these bottles onto one photograph. And the moment you put a bottle next to a bottle, they reflect. It's inevitable. It's glass bottles. The one is plastic, the one is glass, but they reflect. So I had to photograph them like I literally could not move them in this. I had to put them next to each other, and then it's a very technical shoot, and there was a lot of Photoshop with it as well. And it took me quite a long time to get this photograph looking the way it looked. And I just fell in love with the photograph, the colors and the light and the little piece of bread and everything about it. So it's a very technical photograph, but at the end of the day, and Willow Creek also used it. They printed out a massive banner out of it, and I was just like, it was such a nice moment seeing the photograph being used so massive. And it's obviously two of their best products. And then the second one I did with Bellingham Wines, and that's actually a more recent shot. And the moment I took that photograph with the rim of the table, I just totally fell in love with the setting, and it just looks so rich and so elegant. And I think the reason why I liked it so much is because it's exactly what the client wanted, exactly what they wanted, the message that they wanted to bring over with this wine. And it's also a technical shot, but it wasn't that technical because I only had one bottle and the glass next to it. Plus, they didn't see it so much as an advertising shot, more as an editorial, or I think the target market was more social media. So it didn't have to have so much, technicality going into it, and it's just one bottle. But I just love both these shots.
I guess people don't understand how difficult it is to photograph glass. I mean, you're talking about reflection being the one thing, but yeah. Often, like when we're trying to shoot stuff in video, exactly the same principle exists. As particularly if there's a clear liquid in the glass, is like, how do you actually make it stand out? Because you can't see it. Glass is clear. I guess when you say technical, you're being very modest, because there is an inordinate amount of work that goes into making sure that you have that lovely little line of light that you have on the wine bottle, for example. And you're saying you're working with two different materials in the glass and the plastic in the Willow Creek one. Very technical to get that right. And it shows an incredible amount of skill and ability. And I think that for those who are not in the business, trust me when I say, those are two brilliant photographs, because it really is not easy to photograph bottles. One of the things you said earlier on in the interview is that you love to share your knowledge, and you don't only take pictures for your clients, you also help people improve their own photography. We were talking about smartphones and the advent of social media. You've got a specific course that you run where you encourage people to take, or you teach people how to take really good pictures with their mobile phones. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's called How to Take Beautiful Photographs with Your Smartphone. And I can't
A very
say
catchy title.
Not everybody's got an iPhone. So the moment I'm teaching it online, I'm using Zoom as a platform, and it's worked well. People dial in, we have a good chat, and I have an iPhone myself, so I help people, but I also ask them before the time, what phone are you using? So I'll do a little bit of research of that phone to get them more or less the same settings that I'm setting my phone on, so they can take good photographs. The important thing for me about that is, like I said, everybody's got a camera in their hands with their phone, and why not rather take beautiful photographs instead of just taking average photos? Because a lot of people, they take a photo, let's say for instance the sunset, and they're like, it's just not coming out the way they want it, or of their children on the beach, and they're like, it's just not happening. And every now and then they'll be like, oh, this is a good shot, oh, it's a good shot. But actually every shot can be a good shot when I just share a little bit of my knowledge with you, and even using a cell phone. So yeah, how to take beautiful photographs with your smartphone, and I do it on Zoom at the moment. Otherwise, I used to do it teaching people in groups, but the Zoom I kind of enjoy it because it's a one-on-one, and you can ask all your questions, and I can answer them for you.
It's wonderful. Just how do people get in touch with you if they want to sign up for that course, particularly how to take beautiful pictures with your smartphone? How do they get in touch with you?
So they can email me at berna@bernacoetzee.co.za, or they can also go onto my Facebook page. I've got a Berna Coetzee photography Facebook page, and I'm also on Instagram, Berna CT.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your Insta handle so that people can follow you?
So it's Berna CTZ. Just CTZ is short for Coetzee. So you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook, or you can just email me directly.
And if people want to take a look at your portfolio, where would they go for that?
You would go to my website. It's also bernacoetzee.co.za, and yeah, that's where you can see. And I've been very good in lockdown. I've been loading a couple of new photos on Instagram. Woo-hoo. So I've been making it a bit of a mission to get Instagram going.
Cool. Berna, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit and chat to us. Of course, we're chatting to Berna Coetzee as part of our In Conversation series, and we are still giving away, because nobody has yet come up with a brilliant name for the series other than In Conversation with. Obviously, you like that name, but if you can come up with a snappy name for this series, don't forget, we are giving you the chance to have a 30-minute consult with MILK+SUGAR. That's with me, basically, about how to improve your video content that you create during lockdown, and even when you're not in lockdown. So come up with a snappy name. You could be winning yourself that 30-minute consult with me here on Zoom. Berna, as I said, lovely to chat to you. Looking forward to seeing a lot more of your work, either in magazines or on billboards, and all the best of luck to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. It was really a pleasure.